Saturday night in the Big Ten, Michigan State at number 2 Purdue, 8 o'clock Eastern time tip on Fox. Haslametrics makes Purdue a 9.5-point home favorite, over-under of 143. Purdue, of course, projected to be a 1 seed right now. Michigan State a 9 seed, so, in theory, a potential second-round matchup here. I'm going to kind of give you guys my take here. This is the game on our show this week that I have the strongest opinion on. This sets up nicely for Michigan State to stay inside double digits here, in my opinion, if they just change their shot selection a little bit. Because Michigan State on the season, 28th in three-point percentage against the average opponent, 28th in near proximity field goal percentage. Purdue defensively, that's where they're weakest. Believe it or not, they are 256th in near proximity defense, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you have Zach Edey, but that's the number. They're really good in the mid-range. They're 5th, the Boilermakers are, in mid-range field goal percentage defense. And that's where Michigan State typically takes most of their shots. They are 281st in three-point attempt, 183rd in near proximity field goal attempts, but they're 39th in mid-range attempts, even though it is by far their worst field goal percentage offensively of those three types of shots. So I'm hoping that the presence of Edey scares them away from some more mid-range shots. They chuck up a few more threes because they're pretty good at it when they do, and we stay inside the number here. And also just for Purdue, they don't protect the ball, Eli. Like they're 8th in Big Ten play in turnover percentage offensively, so that's when they get into trouble, right? We've seen that they're still susceptible to upsets in recent weeks here, and Michigan State, at least on paper, is a pretty well-rounded team, even though their current seed doesn't really match it. 41st in adjusted offensive efficiency, number 13 adjusted defensive efficiency. I think 10 would be too much here, Eli.
I don't blame you for touching Michigan State. I make this closer to Purdue minus 8.5, minus 9, even accounting for really good home court advantage at Mackey. Michigan State forcing the third highest turnover percentage in Big Ten play, and that's an area where Braden Smith is still struggling to limit turnovers, 7 of them over his last 2 games. And A.J. Hoggard is one of the best on-ball defenders in this conference. So I would expect Izzo to drape Hoggard over Smith and probably get that number turnover-wise closer to 3 or 4 yet again for a really good point guard. I know Smith was upset he wasn't on the Kuzi list, but you got to limit your turnovers, man. The one thing I disagree with you on, and it's not to say that you shouldn't bet Michigan State, because my numbers say you should. I don't know if they should take less mid-range jump shots here. It really depends how Matt Painter wants to play this, whether he looks to use Edey and drop coverage or not. He did it against Ohio State on the road. Granted, that was on the road, and Purdue, teams in general can struggle more so on the road. That's not any sort of exception for the Boilermakers this season, even though they did cover and came back against Michigan despite the Wolverines' hot start in the first half on Sunday. But Tyson Walker could take advantage of Edey in drop coverage. Now, if you want Michigan State to take more threes, you probably need to ask Izzo to play Xavier Booker more minutes. He only played him 17 minutes against Ohio State. That's how you stretch out Edey if you want to take more threes. You have to have a 5 that could space the floor like Michigan did in both of their matchups with Hunter Dickinson against Purdue last season. So it really, really depends on how Painter wants to play this with Edey, on top of the fact that how is Izzo going to game plan? Are you going to limit Booker because you think Sissoko is a better big for the 500th straight game? Even going back to when Booker wasn't on this team, I know Sissoko was a better matchup against Edey on the block, but at some point you have to play freshmen. Like, we haven't seen this issue. Michigan State, granted, hasn't been strapped with this issue since the Jaren Jackson year. Like, we're going back to Miles Bridges and Jaren Jackson when he was playing those freshmen a ton. You have to play Booker more minutes in this game. Yes, I'm talking to you, Tom Izzo, because we both know he's watching and listening to the Outside Shots podcast.
I'm sure he'd be thrilled to hear that, by the way, if he did happen to somehow hear it. Derek, are you in agreement with us that if you're going to bet a side here, it's probably the dog?
Yeah, I do agree. The one thing that I'll mention though is that it's a bit of a tough spot for Michigan State because Purdue has had a week to prepare for this game. You know, they haven't played since last Saturday, I think. So,
But Michigan State hasn't played since Sunday off of 2 losses.
that's true. That's true. So, you know, Purdue though they're due for some negative regression from 3 too. They've tallied 40% clip in Big Ten play and 40% clip over their last 5 games, but according to shot quality, it should be closer to 34%. So they're due for a little bit of negative regression there. And defensively, the Spartans don't allow many open threes. You know, they rank 70th in the country in that regard, according to shot quality. So they don't allow many open threes. And to your guys' point with the turnovers, if you turn over Purdue and their guards, you can win against them. You know, you saw Nebraska do it; they turned them over 14 times. You know, if you can turn them over, you can turn the tides in your favor and probably win these games against Purdue. I think that Ohio State got them too in that regard. So to your point, Eli, with AJ Hoggard, if he's up for the task and creating turnovers, I could see Michigan State covering this game. The one thing, though, I don't think I'm going to bet this game because, I kind of don't want Michigan State to win because then I'm going to have to hear that Izzo in March stuff, this weekend because it's March and it's Izzo time, but, they haven't made the Final Four since 2019. It's just getting exhausting having to hear that Izzo in March stuff. So at the same time, I really don't want Michigan State winning this game. So I'm going to sit this one out, but I do agree that the side here is Sparty.
Also,
Go ahead, Eli.
One last point from me. Similar, this is the last comparison I promise I'm going to make to the Illinois-Wisconsin game. Similar to the Illini and their look-ahead spot to Purdue on Tuesday night at home in Champaign. Purdue also, I know they've had a week to prepare for Michigan State, but 2 days later or 3 days later, you're taking on Illinois, who still has an outside shot of winning the Big Ten regular season title. So interesting to see where Purdue's mindset is in this game, and it's going to be a big number. So I do not hate your bet, and I wouldn't be surprised, man, if Michigan State wins this game outright.